My wife's best friend spun a web of lies, convinced her I was cheating, turned our home into chaos, and I answered with a ruthless strike back. Hey everyone, I'm a 32-year-old male, and I've been married to my wife, a 29-year-old female, for the past 2 years. We met when she joined the company where I was a senior manager, right after her graduation. After working with her for 3 years, our relationship started. We had been dating for about 3 years when we decided that we were both ready to tie the knot, and that's how we got married. The reason I'm telling you all this is so that you understand that my wife and I had known each other for a while before we started dating. We took our time to start dating, and similarly, we took our time before we got married. She knows me better than anyone in this world, which is why the betrayal hurt me so much. But before I tell you about the betrayal, let me quickly introduce another key character who played a big enough role in my so-called villain arc, my wife's best friend Sophia, a 29-year-old female. Sophia and my wife grew up together. They became friends when Sophia's family moved across from my wife when she was 4, and they had been inseparable since then. My wife told me that as Sophia's parents were both very careless and honestly very neglectful, oftentimes Sophia would stay over at my wife's place, which only helped bring the girls together. Once Sophia's parents realized that my in-laws were kind enough to provide for Sophia wherever they were slacking, they started putting the entire burden of Sophia on the shoulders of my in-laws. It was a little crazy hearing their childhood story, honestly, because I have nothing nice to say about Sophia's family from what I have heard about them. Her mother was mentally unstable, and her father was busy sleeping with half the town. When he was not doing that, he would come home and try to hit Sophia. My in-laws had to be the ones to call CPS on her parents when they found Sophia out on the porch one night in the midst of a snowstorm. Her father was out for business, and her mother was in a drugged-out slumber. Calling CPS got Sophia removed from their house, and my in-laws volunteered to take care of her until they found a proper place to rehome her. I think my wife and Sophia were about 10 when this happened. Eventually, Sophia was put into foster care, and while she moved a few miles from where she previously lived, she was still in touch with my wife, which led to their friendship growing stronger over the years. When I first met Sophia, it was after I had dated my wife for about 5 months. She introduced me to Sophia and left me alone with her for a minute to go to the ladies' room. At that moment, Sophia threatened to murder me if I ever hurt my wife. Now, I have a sister, and I know that girls do that whole hurt my bestie, get killed, castrated, murdered thing, but I thought that was what teenagers did. Hearing a 24-year-old say that was a bit strange, and I won't lie, that did set off a few alarms in my head. But I tried not to let that bother me. I told her that I do not plan on hurting her because I love her very, very much, and Sophia insisted that she would be the judge of that. The shift in her personality was a bit bizarre to watch when my wife came back. I later mentioned it to my wife, and she told me that Sophia is one of those quirky, out there girls, and I should not worry about her words at all because she was not being serious. Since then, whenever I could, I have tried my best to avoid Sophia. But until she got into a relationship, it was difficult. She would call at ungodly hours, and sometimes would try to compete with me on who knows my wife the best. It was such grade school behavior that sometimes I wondered if Sophia was really as old as my wife was. But I suppose opposites do attract, and that is why they were the way they were. When Sophia got into a relationship, it was almost like a bomb went off. She just disappeared from our life. Not that it bothered me, but that affected my wife a lot. Sophia did not bother leaving a message. She was there one day and then sent a message. Like, I'm dating XYZ now, okay, bye, and stopped replying to my wife's messages. It was around 7 months before we got married. You can imagine how broken up my wife was about this whole thing. She wanted Sophia to attend her wedding, be a part of her wedding, and everything. While Sophia would refuse to contact my wife, she would leave her on read, and it was just not a good time. I had no words to console my emotionally distraught wife, so I reached out to the boyfriend, as Sophia had me blocked. The guy was very surprised when I told him about the situation because apparently Sophia had not mentioned my wife at all. That was another red flag, honestly, but I tried not to let that bother me. I gave him the time and venue of the wedding because, if my wife couldn't have her best friend as her maid of honor, she would be happy to see her BFF in the crowd. Sophia did show up there with her boyfriend, and she was not the happiest about it. She refused to admit that she had been ignoring my wife's messages for the past 7 months, and claimed my wife did this whole thing where her BFF was not the main focus just to spite her. Very strange, I know. My wife was very upset about the whole situation because she was not expecting such words from Sophia, but when Sophia went no contact again, and we started our married life together, she started moving on from the hurt. Until 3 months ago, Sophia was in no contact with us, but she got back in touch when her husband cheated on her. Did my wife know that she got married? No. Did Sophia bother explaining? Also no. It was strange, bizarre even, how Sophia took my wife for granted, and my wife, being the kind person she is, was there for her. She would show up at our house at ungodly hours, drunk off her mind because she was bar hopping to cope with her pain. And it happened so frequently that my wife begged me to let Sophia stay with us. I was not the most comfortable with the idea, but seeing how happy my wife was now that Sophia was talking to her, I said okay. Sophia started living with us 2 months ago. This was also the time of year when the financial year ends, and as my work deals. With a lot of finances and corporate stuff, I was extremely busy those 2 months. I had to put in a lot of extra hours and go for some extra shifts just to make sure that everything was good to go. I did not have the opportunity to spend time with my wife the way I usually did. I could not take her out on a date every other Friday like I usually did, and I would come home and fall asleep. Even on weekends, I would be either working or napping because of too much work. I know that I have been emotionally distant, but since this happened every year and since we both work in the same company, I assumed my wife would be understanding. But that was not the case. A few nights ago, I came home to my wife completely in hysterics. She looked like she was going to faint any moment. When I tried to talk to her or touch her, she kept pulling away from me and refused to communicate with me. When I asked her what was wrong, she told me that she is a bad wife. I was shocked. I had no idea where this was coming from. I asked her if anyone had said that to her, or if something had happened that caused her to feel that way, and that was when she brought me to my home office. It was unrecognizable. I'm a very organized person. I label and color coordinate everything because I find it easier. But my office was none of that. It looked like a tornado had gone through it. I asked her what happened, and she told me that for the past 1.5 months I had been busy working my ass off for the sake of both of us. Sophia told her that I was cheating on her. Sophia fueled my wife's anxiety and discomfort with me working with newer interns because that's how I met my wife, so what's stopping me from meeting my mistress like that? And so, Sophia insisted that they would find proof in my office. So, my wife and Sophia went through everything together, and now that they could not find any proof, my wife realized how dumb this entire situation was, and had kicked out Sophia from the house. She felt incredibly remorseful, and she kept apologizing to me. I felt so betrayed, and honestly, at the moment, I was not thinking straight at all. I knew that my wife was extremely kind-hearted whenever Sophia was in the picture, but this was simply not done. I asked my wife to stay at the house alone that night and at least do her best to clean up the mess she created while I stayed over at a hotel because I needed some space. My wife begrudgingly agreed. When I was at the hotel and all alone, I remembered something. One day, while a bit drunk, Sophia mentioned how her license is no longer valid due to her drinking and driving, and I did not see her car in the driveway when I left the house. So, I called the police and told them they caught her behind the wheel while driving under the influence, and it is not looking good for her. I have been home since then, and my wife is pretty distressed over this situation. I feel like a villain, and I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, honestly, so here I am. Update 1. Hey everyone, thank you for telling me your honest opinions. I appreciate it very much. Sophia can't weasel her way out of this situation, as she has 3 DUIs. And this one was her 4th one, along with a few unpaid tickets. So, she's looking at a good chunk of money. She asked my wife for the money, and I told my wife that if she gave her that money, I would be very upset, and our relationship would end there because, in my eyes, Sophia was the one who tried to ruin our relationship, and my wife should not be helping her. My wife listened to me and did not give her the money, which earned her a block from Sophia. I can't say I'm too upset about it. Sophia dared to call my in-laws and give them a horrible retelling of the situation, except she got one thing right. I was the one who told on her. In her story, I brainwashed my wife into abandoning her after I complained about her to the police, and that it is not acceptable, and that my wife's parents, my in-laws, should be held responsible. Thankfully, my father-in-law called me to ask me about what happened truly, and I gave him every detail. I told him that I did complain against her because I did not like that she was spewing her boozed-out nonsense on my wife and influencing my wife to doubt our relationship. My father-in-law told me that I should work on my marriage with my wife because if Sophia's words were enough to trigger such insecurities, there must be some underlying issues. He also told me that they will not be paying for Sophia's things, as they too don't support her bad behaviors. When they told her about that, she screamed at them and blocked them as well. Also, I learned from my mother-in-law that she also asked me to be honest with my wife about my complaining about Sophia to the police and about our marriage. My in-laws did give me some solid advice, so I think it is about time I come clean with my wife. Update 3. My wife forgave me for complaining about Sophia. She told me that while, from her perspective, she thinks I overreacted, she understands how, from my perspective, it was a good thing to do, as I am justified in my wants to hurt someone who hurt me. I also suggested that we work on her insecurities and her toxic friendship with Sophia, as you guys have mentioned. I have shown her this post. And I think this whole situation brought us closer because, thanks to all of your comments, she is starting to see the pattern of Sophia's toxic behavior. I really cannot thank you guys enough. Anti-ALP, maybe not a villain. I think you are more of a morally gray hero because I'd have done the same thing. Also, is it just me, or does Sophia seem extremely toxic? Like, no, that ain't a good friend. Please tell your wife to not let her back in because it is not healthy at all. Next story, a brief history. I met my now ex-boyfriend while doing volunteer work. Frankly, he's not been the nicest to me. He is just nice enough, just often enough, to have had me convinced that he loved me. It's easier to see in retrospect. A few weeks before this incident, I booked both of us plane tickets to Germany. He needs to go there to stay with family, as he doesn't have anywhere to live here now that his current lease is up. The plan was for him to fly one way, and for me to go with him for a short stay, then return home by myself. We were supposed to leave today. Now, on to what happened. In between his lease ending and flying abroad, my ex has been staying at a friend's house in a more rural area, and I was invited to visit while his friend was away. We got to the house, and my ex started to make dinner for us. We were joking back and forth, being affectionate, and then, in one moment, he flipped. I had gone to hug him when he wanted to peel potatoes, and he just started yelling. I honestly cannot come up with a bigger reason for him losing his temper aside from that hug. It was so out of the blue, and I'll admit, at that moment, I had a panic attack. My distress only served to escalate his anger. He told me to get out, that there was a bus stop down the street, and that I better hope to get there in time. I gathered my things and left, and thankfully, I did manage to catch a bus. After that initial period of shock, I realized I could never go back to him. I definitely couldn't go to a foreign country with him. I went to the airline's website to cancel my flights, and there was his booking too. I canceled it in an impulsive, numb moment. I didn't even get a refund because it's an economy airline. A few days ago, he texted me as though nothing had happened, asking for his flight details. I replied that there was no flight, that of course I wasn't going to pay to go to Germany with him after what happened. He sent a long reply, saying that I knew he had nowhere else to go, that I knew he was struggling with money, and that I had effectively made him homeless, and he hopes I'm pleased with myself. I honestly didn't know what to say in return, but luckily, I haven't heard from him since. I don't know if he's been able to get a flight himself, and a tiny part of me does worry for him. AITA postscript, I paid for both our tickets with my own money. We never discussed this explicitly, but I just assumed he would pay me back at some point. Since then, it has become quite clear that that was never going to happen. This may or may not contribute to my AITA verdict, I'm not sure. I don't make it a habit of buying flights for people who verbally abuse me, no matter how dire their personal problems are. You are not the asshole for dealing with your own problems, which means cutting him from your orbit. Next story. I'm a 26-year-old female. My sister, a 45-year-old female, told us, me and my other siblings, that she wasn't spending a lot on gifts this year because she splurged to take her son to Disneyland. That's fine. I don't give two freaks about not getting a gift. I've spent several holidays abroad where, obviously, I didn't give or receive gifts on holidays or birthdays. Historically, when my sister has been pretty broke, she will buy little gifts for people from the dollar store. Usually the gifts are useless junk that I don't want, need, or have a use for. For example, one year she got me these sparkly animal trading cards. Little action figure thingies. A little Hispanic Lego man with a sombrero. She and my other older sister are half Mexican and find little things like this to be charming. And this unicorn drinking cup. All of those items, except the cup, which I still use, kind of sat around in boxes until an acceptable amount of time passed, and they got thrown out during a deep clean. I'm not a person who likes stuff that just sits around my house with no purpose. I'll hang cool art, but that's mostly it. I would say my sister has given me gifts like this 4 or 5 times in the past. Anyway, I told my sister that if she is unable to get something cheap off my provided Christmas gift list, then I don't want anything at all. She asked me why, and I told her that I appreciate the effort she makes to give gifts even when she doesn't have a lot of money, but I'm not the type of person who likes cute little things that serve no purpose, or they would likely get thrown away eventually, so it's better for her not to waste the money. She said I was being a shitty asshole and to get over myself. AITA edit. Everyone in my family makes a Christmas list, all of my adult siblings, my mother, my grandmother, etc. Also, the list I made has several items on it under $10. Edit 2. The way a lot of you look at gift giving is really strange to me. You give gifts to do something kind for the person you're giving them to, right? If that's the case, then you should be willing to consider, to a certain degree, what that person does, or, in my case, does not want. If you're buying gifts for someone with an attitude of, I don't care what you do or don't want, I'm going to buy you what I buy you, and God damn it, you better be grateful because I didn't have to buy you anything at all, then aren't you really only gift giving to make yourself feel good or to fulfill a societal or familial pressure that you feel obligated to fulfill? There are a million different scenarios in which someone does something to be kind or helpful. But the reality is, what they're doing is making your life more difficult or inconvenient. One should be able to communicate the idea of, hey, I can see you're doing this with the intention of being kind or helpful. Thank you, I appreciate that. However, it's actually making my life more inconvenient for X reason, so could you please stop? And you're helping her not waste her money, which you know is tight anyway. I ask people for at least a little list of stuff they would like for Christmas for exactly this reason. I don't want to buy you something you don't like, don't want, and won't use. Reflecting on this whirlwind of events, I can't help but feel a profound mix of emotions swirling inside me like a storm that refuses to settle. The betrayal from my wife, influenced by Sophia's toxic manipulations, cut deeper than I ever imagined possible. We've been together for years, building a life based on trust, understanding, and shared experiences from our time at the company. She knows my routines, my quirks, my unwavering loyalty. Yet, in a moment of vulnerability, she let doubt creep in, fueled by someone who has always seemed more like a shadow than a friend. It hurts, not just because of the ransacked office, which symbolized the invasion of my personal space and privacy, but because it highlighted a crack in the foundation of our marriage that I didn't even know existed. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like the man who prides himself on organization and control had suddenly lost both. That night at the hotel, alone with my thoughts, anger bubbled up first, raw, unfiltered. Rage at Sophia for planting those seeds of suspicion, and at my wife for watering them. But beneath the anger was a deep sadness, a grief for the innocence lost in our relationship. How could the woman I love, who I've supported through thick and thin, question my fidelity? Based on whispers from a friend whose life is a series of self-inflicted chaos? As the days passed and I returned home, the distress on my wife's face mirrored my own turmoil. She was remorseful, her apologies tumbling out like a dam breaking, but apologies alone couldn't erase the sting. I forgave her, of course. Love demands that. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means rebuilding, brick by brick, with honest conversations that peel back layers we've ignored for too long. My father-in-law's words echoed in my mind. If Sophia's influence could trigger such insecurities, there must be underlying issues. He's right. My long work hours, especially during the financial year-to-end crunch, have created emotional distance. I've been so focused on providing for us financially that I've neglected the emotional provisioning. Dates every other Friday turned into rare occurrences, weekends into recovery periods from exhaustion. I assumed she understood because we work in the same field, but assumptions are the silent killers of relationships. Now I see how my absence left room for doubt to fester, how Sophia exploited that void with her own pain from being cheated on. It's a vicious cycle, her trauma projecting onto our marriage, turning my wife into a pawn in her emotional games. Sharing this post and reading the comments has been cathartic, a virtual therapy session I didn't know I needed. Strangers calling Sophia toxic validated my long-held suspicions, from that first bizarre threat, when we met to her disappearing acts and reappearances only when she needed something. She's not a friend, she's a parasite, feeding off my wife's kindness, which stems from their shared childhood traumas. Hearing about Sophia's neglectful parents, the CPS call, the foster care. It explains her behavior but doesn't excuse it. My in-laws stepped in as surrogate parents, but enabling her all these years has only perpetuated her entitlement. Blocking my wife after she refused to bail her out financially, screaming at my in-laws. It's the behavior of someone who views relationships as transactions, not bonds. I'm relieved she's out of our lives, at least for now, but I worry for my wife. She's grieving the loss of a friendship that's been more like a sisterhood, warped as it was. We've started therapy, individual and couples, to unpack these insecurities. My wife admits Sophia's words preyed on her fears of not being enough, especially with me working closely with interns, echoing how we met. It's ironic, what brought us together now sows seeds of doubt. But addressing it head-on has brought us closer, turning pain into growth. Looking back, I question if reporting Sophia to the police was villainous or justified. From my perspective, it was retribution, protecting my family from someone who drives drunk and manipulates sober. She has 3 prior DUIs. This 4th could be the wake-up call she needs, though I doubt it. My wife forgave me for it, understanding my hurt, even if she saw it as an overreaction. That mutual empathy is healing. We've laughed about it now, in quieter moments, acknowledging how this mess exposed our vulnerabilities, but also our strength as a couple. The comments labeling me a morally gray hero resonate. I'd do it again to safeguard what matters most. This experience has taught me the importance of boundaries. Sophia's toxicity was a red flag I ignored for my wife's sake, but no more. We've agreed. No more ungodly hour calls, no more crashing our lives uninvited. If she returns, and she might given her pattern, we'll handle it together united. Shifting gears to the other stories that popped up in my mind while processing. This, like the one about the ex-boyfriend and the canceled flight. That woman's impulse to cancel his ticket after his outburst? I get it. The shock of sudden anger, the panic attack, the realization that you're in an abusive dynamic. It's empowering to cut ties, even if it leaves a twinge of worry. She paid for those tickets assuming reciprocity, but abusers rarely reciprocate. Her story mirrors mine in a way, betrayal from someone close, followed by a decisive action that feels villainous but is self-preservation. And the sister with the gift drama? Telling her not to waste money on junk if it doesn't match the list, that's just practical. Family obligations can blind us to waste, but communicating preferences isn't being an asshole, it's honest. Her edit about gift giving as true kindness hits home. If you're giving to make someone happy, consider what actually does that, not just fulfill a ritual. All these narratives weave into my emotional tapestry, reminding me that life is messy, relationships fragile, betrayal stings, but it also clarifies. I'm grateful for the support from online communities. It's like a digital village offering wisdom. My wife and I are stronger now, planning date nights amid my busy schedule, communicating openly about fears. Sophia's shadow lingers, but it's fading. I've learned to trust my instincts more. The alarms that went off years ago were spot on. Moving forward, I aim to be less distant, more present, turning this chapter into a foundation for deeper connection. It's not about being a hero or villain. It's about being human, flawed, and committed to growth. In the end, love isn't perfect. It's resilient.